Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for coming along today. I just wanted to mention one thing. You've all got some goodie bags on your chairs. You don't necessarily need to look through them now, but within there you'll hopefully find we've produced some nice little booklets, which basically summarises the content of today. So be sure to take those home with you because I think you will find them useful. So I just wanted to do a quick presentation on equine rare and native breeds, the who, what, where, and why. So I'm going to talk about who are the UK native breeds, some of the reasons for their decline, the importance of the native breeds, why do we need to be preserving them, and how we can assist. So the UK has 14 native horse and pony breeds, 12 of which are considered rare, and 6 of these are marked as priority status. And the Rare Breed Survival Trust, as Tony said, Tom's here today, so you can go and speak to him. They're obviously the main go-to for learning more about these breeds. My assistant Amelia, I don't think she's up here at the moment, but she very kindly put together this graphic for me, so thank you to Amelia for that. But I just wanted something to show the distribution of these breeds. Where are they native to? And yeah, it's a really good demonstration of their spread right across our country. And that's one of the key points that I want to make today. They're very much been born and bred and built to live in our country. So as Tony said, we can't go through all of them today, unfortunately, one by one. So I've just randomly selected a few here to talk about. So we've got the numbers there represent the number of pedigree dams which produced pedigree registered offspring in the year 2022. And thank you to Tom for providing those figures for me. So we've got the Dartmoor pony. This is a centuries-old breed known for its versatility, used extensively in the tin mining industry, but it's now often considered a child's pony. The Cleveland Bay, originally known as the Chapman horse, they carried the wares of the Chapman, so travelling salesmen. But they're now used as coach horses and for crossbreeding. And I think crossbreeding might be a little bit of what Bruce is going to talk to you about this afternoon in his breeders' talks. That's one of the reasons he has Cleveland Bays for crossbreeding with other breeds. Then we've got the Risque. So this is a Scottish bred pony, and you're going to see one of those on the yard tour this afternoon. Yvonne Evans is here with her Risque colts. They're very much adapted to harsh living conditions, but they are now significantly affected by, they have problems because they're a remote habitat with inbreeding. So they're ones where these technologies are very highly relevant to that breed. Hackney horse and pony. We did have Hackney in just a couple of weeks ago, but he went home, unfortunately. He finished his work here, so we haven't got one to show you today, but that comes from the French word meaning comfortable trot. And it evolved in the 1700s when Arab blood was introduced to produce a smart driving horse, basically, for the Regency period. We've got the Suffolk Punch. We've got a number of Suffolk Punch teaser mares here, actually. I don't know if they're actually down in the barns. Yes, they're in the barns, so you'll get to see some Suffolk Punches today as well. So they're Britain's oldest heavy horse, and this is a breed of particular passion to Tullis, and we're going to talk about semen sexing and things later where we've already worked within the Suffolk Punches. But all lines can be traced back to one horse, Chris Horse of Ufford, which was sold in 1768. That's where all lines of the Suffolk Punch come from. And colour must be chestnut, and notice there's an absence of the T there. That's one of the characteristic points out of that breed. Then we've got the Exmoor pony, and again you're going to see Exmoor today. So short and stocky breed, largely grey or brown in colour. One of the things I didn't know, they almost became extinct during World War II apparently, because they were used as a target, which I didn't enjoy reading about that. But why have the native breeds declined? So one of the main reasons is the loss of use for some of these breeds post the mechanisation era. There's also a perceived lack of adaptability to other uses, and I know there's a lot of campaign among breeders and owners at the moment to promote their versatility. And again, I think that's something that Bruce will be talking about this afternoon. He does a variety of different sports and disciplines with his native breeds. Cost of upkeep, so these heavier horses can be more expensive to keep, and also the rise of the sport and warm blood sector. So the next slide I've got here demonstrates the changeover in between natural cover and the use of AI. And although it's on the change in assisted reproduction tool, it demonstrates also the coinciding decline in native breeds, because the sport horses, we began to breed more via AI via them. So you can see almost the switch over reserve from the 1980s to the present day. So why are these native breeds important? Why do we need to be acting? Why do we want you to be here today to learn about how we can preserve them? One of the key most important things is history and heritage, and these are actually photographs taken from this land here. These are family photographs, kindly provided by Tullis. So it's very much gone full circle that these breeds used to be farming the lands here, and Tullis has now grown a business that acts to support and conserve them for the future. And we're all here today on this land that they were working many years ago. So that's a really important part of it. They're very much part of our history and heritage. Another key attribute of them is that they are designed for the UK climate and landscape. So as that map showed at the start, they're born and bred and raised up here across the UK, and they're very much designed for our climate. And we're living in a period where our climate's changing, things are becoming more extreme. We are potentially going to need hardier ponies, horses and ponies for the future. Ones, these guys can live off very sparse grazing as well. So these are all factors that we need to be thinking of for the future. They could hold really key genetics that we need to adapt to the future. Another point that they're commonly referenced for is for conservation grazing. And this is just a scientific study that they did on the use of these ponies for conservation grazing. So obviously use of undersized species, but particular use their sheep. They always say sheep eat the heart out of the land. Ponies can be less disruptive. So that's another application of them for conservation breeding. Another important one, and a study that I found really interesting to come across, is their link to the sport horse. So this is one study which analysed the contribution of native ponies to the thoroughbred horse. And it actually found that the contribution of native horses was double that of Arabs into the thoroughbred maternal line. So you can see the number of breeds that were picked up as contributing to the maternal line of the thoroughbred. So you've got your Highland, Exmoor, Fell, and that was really interesting to read about that. And there's more studies needed. It's likely to become more apparent that these breeds have contributed to more sport horses when there's more studies done in this area. So as I just said before, they are going to potentially hold important genetic resources that we need for the future. So these are hardier breeds, able to live off sparser land, tolerate more extreme versions of climate. So we really need to be conserving them for that purpose as well. And excellent crossbreed potential. So this is an article the Horse and Hound did, just as one example of these are the Shire horse. These are all Shire horse crosses, and their success in the dressage sphere. And there's more and more competitions coming up now at Horse of the Year, so etc., that are geared towards your heavy horses, your native breeds. So they provide an outlet for people with these native breeds to actually go to top level competitions and compete them. So they do have, providing the correct fitness training, etc., they do have brilliant versatility, and that's something we need to showcase for them. And also catering for different rider needs. So these can often be stockier horses, of calmer personality type for some of them, and cater for a broader range of rider needs versus perhaps the sport horse sector. So their decline. So again, thank you to Tom for providing these figures from the Rare Breed Survival Trust. So these are the annual number of pedigree rams which produce pedigree registered offspring in the year from 2012 to 2022. So I won't go through all of them, but we can see that some of them are at pretty low numbers. We've got the risque there at 3 in 2022. So there's some that are going slightly higher. They have increased over the years, but the broad spectrum in 2022 is these are very low numbers that we're dealing with for these breeds. And this is one of the reasons for holding this event today. And one of the importance of Andy's talk in particular, when we're breeding with small populations, we really need to think about that size of the population and be aware of the size of that population in terms of genetics when we're breeding. The risk with small populations is the increased risk of inbreeding. So inevitably, if you've got a smaller population, your number of mate choices declines. Inbreeding has an issue of once it reaches a certain level, you start to go into something called the extinction vortex. This is where the fitness of the population begins to be affected by the level of inbreeding. And one of the first traits that you might see affected is reproduction. So you've got a declining population, and then through your breeding, you're getting a declining fertility of these animals, both on the male and female side. That's only going to shorten your population even further. And so you easily start to go down this vortex as you see here. So this is very much why we've put this day on today, because there are certain breeds that they perhaps already started to enter into this, or at risk of this, and we really need to act now. We need to be aware of it, and we need to act to lift them out of it and ensure that they're going to be sustainable for the future. A study that's just come out, just been published, very timely in line with this event, is a study on inbreeding, effects of inbreeding in thoroughbreds on reproduction. So we have for many years been talking about the risk of inbreeding on reproduction, but this is the first scientific study that analysed it and shows an effect on the population. So 97, so this is of the study population that they analysed of the thoroughbreds, over 10,000, 97% of them could be traced back to a single stallion, Northern Dancer. And inbreeding references for the thoroughbred quoted in the study were 10 to 13%. This study was looking at pregnancy loss in mares. So the general population, approximately 5 to 10% of confirmed equine pregnancies fail between 65 days of gestation, with a further 7.3% failing before the end of the first day of life. This study, though, found that pregnancies lost in mid and late gestation from thoroughbred mares in the UK had significantly higher inbreeding metrics than UK adult thoroughbred horses. So this is the first study. It's quite a pinnacle one. We were contacted by the Horse and Hound this week. We were doing a feature on it. It's quite a pinnacle one to really show the impacts of inbreeding on reproduction. And although it's within thoroughbreds, it needs to stand as an example to all breeds of what happens if you've got rising inbreeding. So other studies have associated it with reduced fertility in terms of foal loss, but also lower semen quality from stallions, increased risk of retained placenta, diseases such as warm-blood father or foal syndrome, and then there's some studies looking at it, the effect of the performance. This one, for example, is saying a 10% increase in inbreeding was associated with a 7% lower probability of the horse ever reaching the racetrack, so again within thoroughbreds. So banking semen, Tullis is going to do a talk all about assisted reproduction, looking at fresh chilled frozen semen, etc. Banking semen is one tool that we need to be doing to conserve these breeds for the future. And again, this is the Rare Breed Survival Trust gene bank. Other things that we can do to help is promoting the versatility of the breed. So we live in a social media era now. So one of the key drives is to really, if you've got Suffolk that's out hunting, put it on Facebook, share it with people, so people can start to see and learn about the versatility of these breeds, given the correct training. Education and the status of the breeds, that's one of our targets today, and one that we'd really like all of you to go home and talk to people about these breeds, talk about the importance of them, why they're at risk, why we need to conserve them. Optimal mate choices, so we're dealing with small population numbers here, so it's really important we're aware of who we're breeding to who. And that's what Andy is going to talk about this afternoon. And then using assisted reproduction and biobanking to help provide a resource for the future sustainability of these breeds. So to summarise, our aim today is to highlight the plight of native breed equines and their importance to the equine sector, to showcase some of the technologies available to assist their future sustainability, and to learn from native breed owners and breeders the specific challenges facing their breed and how we can best help individual breeds. So that's why we've got the talks at the end of the day from the breeders and also the discussion panel. So we'd like to hear from you guys about breeding these horses. What are the challenges that you're seeing and facing? So thank you for listening. That's the end of presentation 1. We have got space for questions. I'm going to, unfortunately, you have to listen to me again, I'm afraid, because I'm going to be delivering the next presentation. Then we've got Tullis's, and then we've got space for questions after that. So if any of you have got questions, just keep them with you for the moment, and we will invite and answer them in that time. So this second presentation is biobanking to save breeds and species. And this is where I put on my Gemini genetics hat and also a bit of an HSafe one to talk to you about biobanking. What is biobanking? Why do we need to biobank? What are the different materials that can be banked? Some examples of biobanking. Firstly, just wanted to introduce my team. I'm obviously up here talking today, but there's other important people behind me. So I have Amelia, who is around today. I think she might be out downstairs at the minute. Amelia's on the far right, as you're looking at it. So she is my placement student for this year. She's helped a lot with preparing today, so thank you to Amelia. And then we also have Lydia in the middle. She's actually out on the yards today. But yes, we're all very much part of a team. So those speaking are all, it's not just us. There's many behind us that have helped today. So thank you to them. So what is biobanking? So biobanking is a collection of biological and genetic material for future use. And it's very much about using that material now to help with breed, species, survival, fitness, etc. But also collecting it for the future, future-proofing yourself against future unknowns, of which we're in an era of many future unknowns. And there's a brilliant quote from the Frozen Zoo, who we'll talk about later on. You must collect things for reasons you don't yet understand. And that really summarises biobanking as a whole, that we need to be banking resources for if and when we need to use them in the future. So biobanking is a human, plant and animal concept. So it's increasingly developed within the human sector. Plants, I'm going to talk about some of the banks they've got set up for them. And animals is an area where obviously there's a few gaps and where we're wanting to act. It's very much the buzzword of the moment. So this study only goes up to 2019, so that's when they published it, but I expect it would continue to rise, and we always, Tullis is always talking about biobanking at the moment on all the conferences he's going to. That's one thing that they're asking him to talk about, the banking of material for future use. So why do we need to bank materials? Protection against the future unknown, and one of the biggest future unknowns is really the climate for us at the minute, biodiversity loss, the impact that this is going to have on the climate, and how we can grow food for ourselves, for our animals, the amount of land we might have available in the future for keeping animals, because we're seeing increased flooding, etc. There's many unknowns as well as economics. So it's really banking down material that's available to us today to provide us with some resources for the future. To help with breed and species genetic diversity is another application. So I'm going to show you some diagrams later on which will help demonstrate that to you. But when an animal's with us, when that animal passes away, those genetics, if you haven't banked anything, they are lost. That animal only comes once around. So we really need to seize the opportunities that we've got now to bank valuable individuals before they are lost. And that could also be used as well as to help with the genetic diversity of the breed, to help improve a breed or species. Recall traits that we've maybe bred out of them, but actually in the future we decide we want to go back to something that's existed 10, 20 or 30 years ago. And ultimately, this material that we're banking, whether it be semen, skin, all the other materials that we're going to talk about today, they could be pinnacle for breed and species survival. Could provide protection against unexpected population challenges. So another outcome of climate change is increased risk of disease. We've seen within the human population the impact of significant disease outbreaks. I've got a slide about bird flu coming up. These are all diseases that they very much sprung upon us, and they had big impacts. And we need to be thinking that this is going to potentially become more frequent in the future, and we need to protect ourselves against that. Personalised medicine. So this is real development in the human biobanking sphere. They're banking down blood samples, skin, saliva samples, etc., to feed into medicine. Really begin to, at the moment, we all have, if we need a prescription or whatever, we have a generic one, but actually in the future we might be able to tailor it to our individual makeup, and that one day might move into the veterinary field for our animals as well. Understanding of health and disease. So some of these materials might really help us in understanding susceptibility to certain diseases within certain populations, and really understanding the genetics behind animal traits. So on the, this is an example from the plant side of things of why we need to be banking down, why we need to be biobanking. So plants, I'm going to talk about later, seed repositories. So there's lots of biobanks where they're banking down seeds of plants to protect them against things such as this. So this is Panama disease. It's a disease that's very much threatening global banana production. 80% of global production is at risk. So it may well be that we might not have bananas in the future if we don't bank resources down, because they can't find, there's no cure for this infection, and there's no resistant banana varieties identified yet. An example within the animal sector is bird flu. So this has had a huge impact on the poultry sector, both the commercial and the wild avian population as well. Another challenge with poultry is that their semen doesn't actually freeze very well either. So you may or may not know, but the commercial lines of poultry, they're mainly kept, their lines are protected by having the founder lines in essentially underground nuclear bunkers, high biosecurity premises, because we can't freeze poultry semen very well at the moment. But again, this is another example. It's a disease that had a significant outbreak, significant loss of animals, and we really need to be banking resources so that we can recover them in that event. For horses, why we need to be biobanking, so we're going to talk about obviously biobanking for native breed conservation today, but it can also become useful in the future for helping with understanding health and disease within our equines, really understanding the genetics behind certain conditions such as laminitis, etc. Another key challenge for horses in the future is anthelmintic resistance, and actually banking down materials that could be vital for us responding to that in the future. And then disease outbreaks with a warming climate, that is going to be a risk to our population. Exotic diseases such as African horse sickness, West Nile virus. We really need to start thinking ahead into the areas where these diseases are going to start to become apparent. An example of a specific biobank is one set up for grass sickness. So this is one where they are collecting different biological resources to try and understand the genetics behind grass sickness and why certain animals are more susceptible to this. So what do we need to biobank? You'll see today when we talk about it, we're promoting versatility of samples. So it's not just about banking semen, it's about banking a versatility of samples. So also banking skin samples, we'll talk later about banking strips of ovarian and testicular tissue, which we do for Nature Safe. And also cataloguing this material, so it's in an organised and catalogued system for the future. You soon begin to, when you start processing these samples, 100 samples rapidly turns into 1,000, that you need to be able to know. One of these things is when we're biobanking, people need to know what's banked and what's not, so we can see the gaps and see what's available. So the database and organisation is as important as processing of the samples. And as I say, the next generation of the biobanking is to link it to clinical records, be that human or animal, and to actually help improve health and disease and improve treatment there. So some biobanking examples. So on the crop side of things, plants, there's several banks set up, Millennium Seed Bank being one. So this is where they've got the seeds stored down, and they do propagate a number each interval to continue the lines and ensure they've got resources banked for these crop lines for the future. One that we are becoming involved with on the animal side is Nordgen. So this is a group that's behind the Svalbard seed bank. So there's a seed bank kept under the ice in the Nordic region. They're now wanting to set up one for animals. We've already been over to Norway with them, helping advise on the biobanking model. So basically the technologies that we're talking about today, educating them on that and how we can help with that. And we're due to fly out not next week, but the week after, to Finland for another stage in development of that biobank. And we're also involved in formulating a white paper that they're going to present to their governments for funding. So the key message here is this is a group that, because they've got the seed bank, they're already thinking very much along these lines. Their government is very highly likely to fund this project because they've already got it for seed banks. We're going over there to tell them what to do, so we need to make sure actually our UK is doing this too. We don't want to be left behind. It's very important to be thinking about biobanking. And wild animals, so Tullis is going to end the day with a talk on Nature Safe. So in terms of animals, the main biobanks at the minute, even though these are quite sparse themselves, are for wild and endangered animals. So there's Nature Safe, which I just talked to you about, Hyrax, the Frozen Ark, and there is San Diego Zoo in the US. So we were very fortunate in January to go to the US, and we met the team at San Diego Zoo. And this is where the quote came from. The need for biobanking for reasons we don't yet understand. So this zoo has been taking skin samples as far back as 60 years ago, along with semen samples and sections of ovarian and testicular tissue. At that time, they didn't know what all this material was going to be used for, but they took it and preserved it for if it becomes valuable for the future. And they're now starting to utilise that preserved material. So I'm going to talk to you later about the cloned Przewalski's horse and why that has been cloned and its impact for conservation. In terms of domestic animals, though, there's not really an organised, defined system for breed and species survival in terms of domestic animal biobanks. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And as I say, we want to promote the collection of a diversity of material, mainly going to talk about collecting semen and then skin samples. And what these materials can be used for. So obviously semen in assisted reproduction, ovarian and testicular tissue, that's more for Nature Safe, where we're going to look at maybe producing lab-grown eggs and semen in the future from those preserved strips. And skin samples, we're going to talk to you a lot about this afternoon, about the different tools. Yes, genetic replication, aka cloning, is one of them, but there are other tools in the toolbox that those skin samples can be used for, and that's why they're so important for us to be starting to think about now and collect. In terms of when to biobank is only as good as the quality of the materials entering that biobank. So this is where we need to take note of Andy's talk later on, and he's going to talk to you about breeding, looking after the current living population, best make choices for the current health of the population. And we want to be banking down a wider resource as possible. So if we're in a closed population and we're not monitoring our breeding, we can see the die out of the versatility of different characteristics. So it's about banking what's available to us today and capturing the broad spectrum of samples. Just on the last few slides of sample ownership, that's often something people ask us about. So the different biobanks work on a model of individual private owners holding samples. For the biobanking we do for equine rare breeds here already, that's a mixture of individual owners, but then there's also some breed societies that own the samples, and that can help with long-term future use. Samples being banked that may be being used outside the lifetime of the original owner. And for Nature Safe, the samples, Chris will talk to you more about this, but they're owned by the zoos and wildlife organisations. And then the livestock biobank that I'm going to talk to you about later, that's something we're actually aiming for government to fund, because the ultimate aim of that biobank is for our food security. So we really want government to chip in there and really help with that, because that's about protecting society for the future. Responsibility for biobanking. So it's all really at everybody's level. So individuals promoting the word of the importance, breed societies coming together as well to think about breeding horses here and now, but then for the future as well. Government, as I say, in terms of food security, they should also be thinking about the wild and endangered animals, but it's a bit more trickier to lobby support there. And also need to be thinking about the quantity of samples we need to biobank and the generation intervals. So that's where people such as Andy can come in and advise on which animals we need to be biobanking and how often we need to be renewing that resource. And I just wanted to finish on a future prospect for biobanking. So today we're going to talk about banking semen and skin samples and the other materials, testicular tissue, etc. But in the future, we might actually be 3D DNA printing, is one prediction. So this is where we'd have genetic codes of the animals on a computer and be printing them off, and that'd be our way of biobanking and utilising those samples. This is going to take quite some development though, and also we need all the genetic codes of those animals to feed into those computers. So it's still imperative that we are collecting resources in the way that we're going to explain to you today, but that's just one future idea for you of where things might progress to in terms of biobanking. So thank you for listening to me.